In this video, we'll be installing our Supreme 2.5-inch front lift kit for the 2015 and newer Colorado and Canyon trucks. Start by lifting the truck off the ground, and if you're working with a floor jack, make sure to support the truck from the frame using jack stands. Remove the front wheels from the truck. Remove the upper sway bar link nuts and bushing from both sides of the truck. Rotate the spindle so you can access the caliper mounting bolts. Attach a coat hanger or something similar to the truck to support the caliper once it's removed. Here we're looping around the upper control arm bolt. Remove the caliper mounting bolts. Slide the caliper off the rotor. And now pass your hanger wire through one of the caliper bolt holes to support it. Hang it high enough so there's no tension on the brake hose. At this point, if your truck is a four-wheel drive model, remove the front axle nut in the center of the hub. Rotate the spindle in the opposite direction and remove the tie rod end nut. Disconnect the outer tie rod from the spindle. To prevent any damage from strain, loosen and remove the wheel speed sensor mounting screw. Unbolt the sensor wire screw from the spindle and move the whole thing out of the way along with the caliper. Now we'll remove the upper ball joint nut to disconnect the upper control arm from the spindle. If the ball joint starts to spin while you're undoing it, use an Allen key to hold the ball joint stud still. The upper arm will be under tension, so don't unthread the nut all the way without applying some downward pressure to the upper control arm. Once the nut is off, allow the arm to pivot up and tilt the spindle outwards. Remove the lower strut mounting bolt. Go ahead and pull out the sway bar link completely. Now the lower control arm can hang free. Moving to the top of the strut assembly, remove the 3 nuts securing the strut to the frame. These can be a little difficult to access with the wheel well liners in place, so don't be scared to push it out of the way with your hands. With all 3 nuts removed, you can now remove the strut assembly from the truck. Install the new strut spacer on top of the strut, along with a washer for each stud and the included nylock nuts. You'll need to lift the spacer up just a little bit for clearance to install the washers and the nuts. Now run the nuts all the way down to secure the spacer to the strut. These nuts get tightened to 43 pound-feet of torque. Now it's time to reinstall the strut into the truck. Remember that with the strut spacer mounted, the strut will be rotated 180 degrees on its shaft axis to reinstall. For reinstallation, secure the lower strut mount first, and a small pry bar can help with aligning the mounting holes. The lower strut mount bolt gets torqued to 74 foot-pounds of torque and then rotated an additional 35 degrees. Now you can secure the upper strut mounting location using the original nuts. These will also be torqued to 43 pound-feet. In order to reconnect the upper ball joint, you'll need to apply pressure from the bottom of the lower control arm to partially load the suspension. This can be done with a floor jack, or in our case a spin jack. Use a pry bar to assist in bringing down the upper arm far enough to pass the ball joint through the spindle and get the ball joint nut threaded on. If your truck is a four-wheel drive model, this is the time you'll also want to make sure the front CV axle snout is aligned with the hub and begin to slide into the spline smoothly. The ball joint nut gets tightened to 37 pound-feet of torque and then rotated an additional 90 degrees. At this point, you can relieve the support from the lower control arm. Be aware that it's completely normal at this point for the upper control arm to make contact with both the drop stop and the coil spring. Full droop is not part of the suspension's normal operating range, and this is alleviated once there's load on the suspension. Once this is done on the other side of the truck as well, you can reinstall the sway bar links on both sides and torquing them to 22 pound-feet. Follow that up with the outer tie rod ends on both sides, torquing them to 26 pound-feet, and then rotate an additional 90 degrees. Reinstall the speed sensor wire bracket onto the spindle, and then gently reinstall the speed sensor into the spindle, torquing these bolts to 53 pound-inches. Keep in mind that's pound-inches, not pound-feet. Remove the brake caliper from your support. Bring it back down over the rotor and align the rear mounting holes. Reinstall the original hardware and torque these bolts to 74 pound-feet plus an additional 30 degrees. If you've got a four-wheel drive truck, this is where you'll tighten up the front axle nut as well to 190 pound-feet. Reinstall the front wheels on the truck. Lower the vehicle to the ground and get ready to enjoy your new lift.